History happened everywhere.
The verdict.
This is our after-show podcast where we look back at the most recent episode, episode 97, Darkness in Venezuela, during 1967, the Summer of Love. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and check it out, or else there will be spoilers ahead.
Now, how's my sound? I'm about 18 inches away.
Hello, my name is Ryan Weir, and I'm here in the HHE studio with the Miss World to my misbehaviour. It's Mr. Peter Goddard.
World peace. That's what you wish for as a beauty contestant, I believe.
I've
seen Miss Congeniality. I know how this works.
You've seen that movie so many times.
I'm a big fan, actually.
And we are joined as ever by the dark-dwelling daydreamer. It's the judge himself. It's Mr. Paul Dursley.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Judge. Now, Peter, I have spent the past week dropping out in the windowless basement of a hippie's house, and as such, I have forgotten everything that we talked about during the episode. So, would you mind reminding me what happened in, let's say, 60 seconds?
Not at all, brother. When would you like me to start?
I'd like you to start now.
We travelled to the northern tip of South America to cavort alongside the beautiful people, the multi-beauty pageant-winning Venezuelans. We found the tallest waterfall in the world and discovered the mega-diversity of the region. We learned about the Summer of Love, 1967, when San Francisco was hopping but Caracas was shaking, enduring a terrible earthquake in the darkness of the night. And we met the anthropologist Napoleon Chagnon, whose shenanigans amongst the Amazon basin tribe called the Yanomamo resulted in controversy, debate, and a great deal of blood in American fridges. It was darkness in Venezuela in 1967.
That was last week's episode done, summarised nicely. Nice one, son. Now we're over to a young Dursley who's gonna tell you what he thought of thee. He'll take you apart without any care. He's the lovely Paul Dursley. The lovely Paul Dursley. Ah, yes, I remember now, and what an episode it was, Pete. As much fun as Christmas starting in October. But what does it matter what I think? Because we are here for the opinion of just one man, Judge Dursley. So, Paul, before we convene the court and receive your final ruling, why don't you kick us off with your first impressions of episode 97?
Tin pot little dictator.
That's not very nice.
Ryan was a bad host, I agree.
I tried hard.
I think you know what I mean.
I believe you're referring to Maduro, is that right, Paul?
Yes, and the predecessor as well.
They've not had a great run, have they, to be fair?
No, how you can squander the second largest oil reserves in the world and be one of the poorest countries in the world defeats me.
Well, we have seen the resource curse in action elsewhere, haven't we, where the raw materials get gobbled up by the main characters in the country and it doesn't quite spread down and trickle down to the population as a whole.
And you called that during the episode, Pete.
I did indeed. And I also called the early Christmas incident. You recall I said Maduro had declared Christmas early and I wasn't exactly sure how it worked. Well, I went onto the Reddit site R Venezuela to ask some actual Venezuelans what it was all about. Now, the first thing that literally everyone said was it's a scam to distract from his current woes, which I think we pointed out in the episode. But I would point out that for Redditing Venezuelans in particular, it is not a scam that's working very effectively. They were all like, no, it's just ridiculous. The Christmas itself hasn't moved. You still celebrate on the 25th, but some people will get bonuses early. Some people will start to slack off. But by and large, they said it was pretty transparent and not very well-respected manoeuvre.
They say that as soon as October rolls around, they'll be putting their stockings on and wearing their jumpers on the fireplace.
Yeah, the problem is the song now that was 12 Days of Christmas now lasts about 2.5 hours as if on the 49th day of Christmas. My true love sent to me 49, I don't know, killer bees.
Go on then.
And the rest.
12 mountain goats.
It's a frightening proposition, though, isn't it? Christmas starting earlier.
Yeah, it's bad enough keeping it at bay when the shops and the supermarkets want to sell you things without the government chipping in with, hey, let's all start early.
So, yes, if Christmas started in October, that means that sort of the shops would start having tinsel up in July.
Exactly.
Ooh.
I feel your shudder, Paul, from here.
But yeah, that is a fundamental problem with Christmas. Is it's at the wrong time of year.
It barely gets started in your place, though.
Bah, humbug.
I've never had Christmas myself.
You've never celebrated Christmas?
Not in my flat. No. Well, put it this: I've never had Christmas decorations up.
Right, Pete, we're turning up on Christmas Day at Paul's house.
Yeah, for sure.
That's fine. I don't care. You won't be able to get in because I'll be at my parents'.
Famously, Christmas is the time to get into anybody's house through a chimney.
Okay, find a chimney first of all.
You can squeeze through a vent of some kind, I'm sure.
Dursley Mansions must have a chimney somewhere.
I get the feeling we're going slightly off track here.
Yeah, that's very true. Venezuela, what's your thoughts on Venezuela, Paul? Do you have much connection with the place?
I think sort of as a kid, the one thing that fascinated me about Venezuela was Lake Maracaibo, which is, that enormous teardrop-sized lake in the west of the country. It just looks so weird geographically.
It does. Famously looks like Venice, too, with all its houses on stilts.
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, different sort of stilts in Venice.
So I have a thing that I want to talk about that is not actually quite Lake Maracaibo, but a river that empties into Lake Maracaibo called the Catatumbo. And it is an area where the winds and the water, I guess, as well, create this atmospheric phenomenon that is basically continuous lightning. So for 140 to 160 nights a year, for about 9 hours, there are lightning flashes that go, they think, from like 16 to 40 times a minute. So the sky is just constantly flashing with lightning in this area for hours on end, for days on end even, and it's just perpetual lightning.
That sounds amazing. How have I never heard of this?
Well, I was surprised. I'd never heard of it either, but yeah, it is a popular tourist destination. Apparently there was one year it actually stopped lightning briefly, which it had never done before, and then everyone locally started to panic because there's quite a lot of tourists actually go to see this incredible ongoing lightning phenomenon.
Right.
But yeah, it's back and it's up and running again now. But I think it's because something specific to the way the winds go across the water, and then I guess the Andes Mountains are there as well. And it just creates the ideal conditions for this continuous lightning to happen.
I feel like we should try and source the energy from this.
It does feel like either a portal to another dimension or a limitless energy opportunity, I would agree.
Exactly.
And it's called Catatumbo Lightning, and it's the only place where this happens from what I can make out.
That is interesting. If you'd have put that in the episode, you'd have got a better score.
Oh. Not a place if you've got epilepsy, though, I'm imagining.
No.
Okay, so guys, obviously Miss World featured quite heavily throughout the episode.
Yes, I would observe that, Ryan, since the episode, you inspired me to go ahead and contact Miss Venezuela, and I didn't get a reply.
Did you not?
No.
Well, look, the Miss Venezuela competition is quite the event. It lasts up to 7 hours sometimes.
Whew.
It's as big as like the Olympics or like any of these other big national sports events or international sports events. In some ways, it's actually an unofficial national holiday that everybody gathers around to watch Miss Venezuela. They even operate something called the Beauty Factory, which sees all the contestants come together months in advance of the event. Every day for months, they do this rigorous training regime of learning things like etiquette, diplomacy, how to do a catwalk, how to speak publicly, how to improve their physical appearance. They learn how to groom themselves, professionally, I guess.
So are these people really ugly at the start?
Yeah. Just you wait, Henry Higgins.
The worst part is where they have to practice wearing their costumes. And in some cases, these costumes are so elaborate that they can weigh up to 50 kilos. That's 110 pounds. Almost the entire weight of themselves, these women.
And I'm going to guess dry clean only.
Yeah, certainly, yeah. Now, there's even rumours that some of the contestants at the beauty farm are, in quotes, encouraged to undergo cosmetic surgery. But as you said, Peter, there are more Miss World winners from Venezuela than any other nation. India comes a close second. But what is also amazing...
It's very cheap television.
It's very cheap television, that's true. Yes, but what also is amazing is that many of the winners have gone on to have incredible careers afterwards. Really challenging that sort of lazy perception that Miss World contestants are just there to be looked at. For example, the winner of Miss Venezuela in 1981, she went on to pursue a career in politics. She became mayor at 26 years old. She later became governor and even ran for president in 1998.
I struggle to imagine an attractive politician. I think it almost feels like one of the rules. Beautiful people have already got everything else on lockdown. Surely you can't be taking over politics as well. That seems almost unfair.
Well, there is the say, isn't there? Sort of politics is a beauty contest for ugly people.
I've not heard that. That's great. Miss Venezuela 2015, she joined the military, got her pilot's license, then set up a foundation to help the elderly, and now advocates for women to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Miss Venezuela 2019, she became an activist, later served as the president at the Federation of Centers of the Central University of Venezuela. Miss Venezuela 2000 was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 27 and went on to write a book documenting her recovery, which was then used to help raise awareness for young women. Miss Venezuela 2020, she's currently pursuing a degree in medicine, aiming to specialize in cardiology. And finally, Alicia Mercado, Miss Venezuela 1996, she has gone on to have an incredibly successful career in entertainment and business, but also, sadly, is perhaps most well known for having been publicly criticized as being too overweight by one Donald Trump. Yeah, he called her Miss Piggy. He went on later to refer to her as Miss Housekeeping, a derogatory reference to the ridiculous stereotype about Latin American women being cleaners.
What an awful man.
Stay classy.
I see. Did she retaliate or was she demure and silent?
She was interviewed on Fox News and she just said, look, I had a terrible experience meeting him and he's not a very nice person.
Yeah.
But there you go. So, incredible, really. What an event. And, an event in their calendar, but, also making a difference around the world.
Yeah, it did sound like they had a diverse group of things. The one I couldn't stop thinking about was the one who you said joined the military and learnt to fly. I have in my head an image of you flying your MiG around the skies of South America and you see an enemy fighter approach and you pull alongside in full regalia with a tiara and bright lipstick. You can see the pilot and think, oh no, it's Miss Venezuela.
Angels 1-5.
What's that reference to?
It's a reference to the Battle of Britain. Angels were British aircraft. And I think the Germans were called bogies.
They still use bogies, don't they?
Bogey at 12 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, wipe it away.
So, Ryan, I don't have much of a piece for this next section, but I do have to share with you my low point in the research and what I nearly brought to the episode.
Oh, dear.
A chap called Frankie Poulain, who worked as a tour guide in the Venezuelan mountains. While he was there, he got bitten by some bees, or stung by some bees, rather. He said, I put my machete through a bee's nest. The bees over there are far worse than they are here, and I got stung 30 or 40 times. My whole body swelled up. But then, fortunately, he gets some antihistamines and he survives. And shortly after this experience, he's persuaded to return home to the UK by singer Justin Hawkins, who asked him to return from Venezuela to London to play bass in a new band called The Darkness.
Lord, that was you were going to bring that as your section.
I was very close to bringing that.
But then you discovered the master that is Napoleon Chagnon.
Napoleon Chagnon, baby, yes.
Had you heard of him, Paul?
No, I hadn't. I'm sort of quite surprised that I hadn't with a name like that.
But the other thing I thought was interesting was that the motivation for the backlash against him as well was apparently that he was undermining the authority of the local missionaries. So that was the theory, that the other book was mostly informed by people who had really an axe to grind against this guy. So once you realise that, then suddenly that whole book that makes all these allegations makes a lot more sense as being potentially not to be trusted.
Is there a consensus now, a few years after his death, about where he sits on that spectrum?
The impression I got was that there is still a split decision, because actually it became almost a symbolic disagreement between schools of thought in anthropology itself. So it almost became not about him himself, but about his belief. He was talking about the biology determining culture, and the alternate school is that culture is its own thing and it's generally material rather than biological. So these then became a whole split in the communities of anthropologists. So he became just a convenient lightning rod, I think, for a lot of it.
You don't want to be a convenient lightning rod in Venezuela.
You do not.
Right, during my section on the 1967 earthquake, I mentioned that Caracas had been hit by another earthquake, a bigger one, in 1812, and that had resulted in the deaths of an estimated 20,000 people. Well, I didn't go into too much detail about that one, but it is a fascinating moment in Venezuela's history, so I thought I'd tell you about it here. So the earthquake struck Venezuela on March 26th, 1812, around 4 p.m. local time. It was a massive quake, and it affected cities across the country. Some cities, like San Felipe, they were so completely destroyed that the survivors just decided to abandon the area and just rebuild it elsewhere. One eyewitness later wrote, "It was 4, and I left my house for the Holy Cathedral Church. About 100 steps before reaching the San Jacinto Square, the earth started moving with a terrible sound. I ran, some of the balconies of the post office fell before me when I entered. I moved out of the reach of the ruins of buildings and watched as most of the temple collapsed. That inexplicable sound was followed by the silence of the grave. I was alone in the middle of the square and rubble. I heard the screams of those who were dying inside the temple. I climbed up the broken ruins and entered the place. There I saw about 40 people, either torn apart or close to dying among the debris. I climbed back, and my mind will never forget that moment."
Wow.
But look, this was all obviously horrendous. But one thing that stood out in that account is that this person was on his way to church at 4 in the afternoon. And the reason for that was because the day that the earthquake hit was right in the middle of the Christian Holy Week. It was actually Holy Thursday or Maundy Thursday. And most people in the cities were at church. Now, people in 1812 were especially religious. And so many of them interpreted the earthquake as being God's punishment on them for their sins. In fact, in the days that followed, the survivors held massive processions through the streets, where hundreds of people all publicly confessed their sins aloud in the hopes that God would forgive them. And this is where things get even darker, because just days before the earthquake, General Domingo de Monteverde had landed in Caracas with several hundred troops looking to recover the territory for the Spanish crown. Basically, if you'll remember, this was the start of the move for independence. And just 3 months earlier, in December of 1811, Venezuela had announced the country's first national constitution and established the first republic. Well, news had gotten back to the Spanish crown, and they'd sent Domingo out with his troops to quell the rebellion. Now, when they arrived, obviously the earthquake hit, and so Domingo just sort of seized on this opportunity by spreading propaganda, saying that the devastation was God's punishment because they had sought independence from the crown.
That's canny.
And it worked, because he soon found himself with loads of royalist converts. He used his military to go in and control the remaining supplies of food. He launched violent offensives against the remaining groups of rebels. And within just 2 months, he'd wiped out the remaining rebels and he'd ended Venezuela's first revolutionary government. So, yeah, the Spanish crown regained control, law and order was reinstated, the leaders of the rebellion were executed, and Domingo made sure that plans were put in place to stop any further dissent. But of course, this was short-lived because one of the rebel leaders, a guy called Simón Bolivar, had managed to escape during this time, where he regrouped and returned just 1 year later in 1813, where he then succeeded in recapturing Caracas and starting the Second Venezuelan Republic. So how about that? All that happened within a period of 6 months.
Well, that's all very well and historical, Ryan, but I want to go back to something you said, which was everyone was walking around publicly confessing on the streets. Would you or would you not be also wandering the streets with your notebook going, oh, what did my neighbour get up to?
Exactly. You could have a lot of blackmail out of that, couldn't you?
Yeah. I'd be wanting to one-up my neighbours, just keep coming up with more and more elaborate sins.
Oh, yeah, they go, I killed a man. So, Ryan, we talked about Angel Falls and Jimmie Angel going over the falls, and you were
I'm
talking about...
amazed you didn't know that. I thought that was something that everybody knew, that it was named after Jimmie Angel.
No idea. Never heard of Jimmie Angel.
No. But yes, you said, did he go over in the sense of the classic over the falls in a barrel kind of situation? So that got me interested in who goes over falls in barrels. And I thought it was a general waterfall thing, but it seems to be, from what I can make out, that it does happen in other waterfalls, but it's really a Niagara Falls event. A lot of people attempted the drop, including one notable chap who thought a good idea to add to the barrel experience was an anvil. That wasn't a great idea. When they went to recover him, they found an arm. That was all that was left of him.
Oh, no.
And since 1951, when another daredevil died, the stunt has been illegal and you can be fined up to $25,000 for doing it. So, in conclusion, do not try and go over Niagara Falls in a barrel.
There's got to be a point, isn't there, where they put that lid on the barrel and you think, oh, no, wait, this is a terrible idea. What am I doing?
Yeah. Why am I doing this again?
Okay, so we were talking about Jimmie Angel.
We were. Private detective, almost certainly.
He certainly was not a private detective, but he did lead an extraordinary life. So I'm going to tell you about him. Born on August 1st, 1899, James Crawford Angel was one of several children born to humble farmers. He was captivated by the idea of flying. Now, this caught his attention so much that as a teenager, he ran away from home to become a pilot. And luckily enough, he found himself becoming the assistant for an airshow pilot who let him get in the cockpit every now and then, whenever he wanted, so that he could self-learn how to fly.
Which... highly recommended approach for flying, isn't it? Everyone's like, just have a go.
Yeah, you'll pick it up. It'll be fine. But yeah, supposedly Angel joined the war effort during World War I. He served as a pilot and fought battles in the skies over France. But eventually he returned to the United States, where in the 1920s he took a job as a stunt pilot. And he performed at fairs and exhibitions, and he even got a couple of jobs as a stunt pilot in Hollywood too. But in the late 1920s, he realized he needed to earn a bit more money, so he moved to Central America, where they were looking for pilots for a mining company, basically transporting people across the country, between remote locations. So eventually he finds himself flying frequent missions over Venezuela. And it's here that he starts to mix with a group of explorers, including one old gold prospector called J.H. McCracken, known to his friends as Shorty.
Shorty McCracken. This is a boy's own adventure book. Jimmie Angel, Shorty McCracken.
It gets more so like that. So Shorty tells Angel that he has discovered an entire river filled with gold in a remote highland part of southeastern Venezuela. And he asks for Angel's help in finding it in exchange for half the wealth. Angel agrees, but before he can get there with Shorty, Shorty dies. And he never gives Angel the precise location of where this river of gold is.
Just got this hand-scrawled map.
Exactly. And so Angel becomes obsessed. He gives up his job, he borrows money from his friends and his family, and he continues the search. Now, it's during one of these flights, looking for the river of gold, that he first flew over Angel Falls and went, oh, look, there's a really big falls there. Now, that was in 1933. 4 years later, Angel is still circling Venezuela looking for the river of gold. This time, he's brought with him his wife, a mechanic, and the mechanic's assistant. So all four of them are flying around, and he decides he's going to land the plane on the summit of a mountain near Angel Falls. Now, unfortunately, where he lands the plane is in a marshy swamp, and it gets stuck in the mud, and they're unable to take off. So, stranded on the top of the mountain with no means of communication, the group decide the only way out is to walk down the mountain and through the jungle until they find civilization. They walk through the jungle. It's filled with all the things that you might expect that want to kill them: snakes, insects, and big cats. And for 11 days, they navigate using, and I quote, the sun, the stars, and Jimmy's intuition.
Oh, well, that's encouraging. Don't worry, guys. I've got intuition.
I think it's this way, guys.
And bear in mind, I am the one who's been saying, I think there's a river of gold around here somewhere for 4 years.
Yeah. Anyway, eventually they do find this little remote village, and the people who live in the village are like, who the heck are you and where you come from? Like, nobody goes out into the jungle. But they did survive. Now, sadly, Jimmie never did find the River of Gold. In fact, it never has been found. You might be surprised. But thanks, Shorty. But his abandoned plane, the one that was, got stuck in that muddy swamp, that was discovered 33 years later in 1970.
Oh, wow.
The military found it, they airlifted it out from the mountain, and they offered it to the Aeronautics Museum in Maracay in Venezuela, where it's on display to this day. You can go and see it. So, yeah, he lived his life as a relative pauper. He struggled financially. He continued to borrow money from his friends and family until his death in 1956. Now, unfortunately, this is when he became more famous than he was in life, because he became something of a legend. There are folk tales that are told about him. There are exhibitions about his adventures. They've even had commemorative postage stamps released with his face on. But the question is whether or not we can say that Jimmie Angel actually went over the falls or not, right? We questioned that in the episode. Is it right to say that he flew, is flying over the falls, going over the falls? Well, I'm here to tell you that Jimmie Angel did go over the Angel Falls. And that's because when he died, a decision was made to scatter his ashes over the falls. And sure enough, in 1960, a ceremony was held where the remains of Jimmie Angel were floated in the river until they eventually went directly over the falls.
Please tell me as the jar went over the edge, they were playing Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls.
That's not how that song goes either. What's wrong with you?
I got a tin ear.
And so we have come to the end of the line, gentlemen. It's time for us to step into the dock, Peter, and prepare to face the people's judge. Judge Dursley, are you ready to give your verdict?
Yes, I am.
And then will the defendants please rise?
Certainly will.
Your Honour, as usual, may we start proceedings by first asking for your verdict on factual content.
I think generally the facts there cannot be disputed. There were a couple of controversies in that, so I think generally facts acceptable.
Fact acceptable.
Highest form of praise.
Then may we have your grade for factual content?
I shall give you for factual content B-.
Nice.
Solid.
Then, Your Honour, may we have your verdict for entertainment value?
Funnily enough, I wasn't as entertained as some episodes. I don't know why.
There was a lot of darkness to this.
It was not an
Yes.
upbeat episode by any means, was it?
Yes, there was a lot of darkness, and I suppose this isn't fair, but I'm quite often swayed by sort of my opinions on the country and whether I sort of like the country or not. And I have to say Venezuela's one of those places where you sort of think I'll give it a miss at the moment.
A Miss World.
Exactly, or a Miss Universe.
Okay, well then maybe have your grade for entertainment value.
Sorry about this, but I think I'm going to have to give you C-.
That's disappointing.
I was hoping for a D for darkness, but oh well, I'll take it. Your Honour, may we have your verdict on Dursley Factor? The mysterious, the elusive, the unknown.
Well, what can one say about darkness in Venezuela in 1967? Well, it was a mysterious place, wasn't it? So for that fact, I shall give you C.
C.
Yes.
Okay.
Bang,
Middle C.
Heartland grade. That.
And so we reach the final verdict. But before the judge passes his ruling, Peter, we do now have an opportunity to enter a plea. So if we choose to do so, we should make that plea now.
Well, I think I would actually, because I would like to point out that we had a single year from which to find good stories. Brian found an incredible tale, not just of an earthquake, but of the prediction of that earthquake, and I found an individual travelling through the Amazon basin, changing the face of anthropology. Both of us found substantial and riveting stories from a single year.
Wow, I want to give us an A. I'm inspired. Well, Your Honour, the defendants stand before you. Have you reached a verdict?
What should I do? What should I do? Okay, I shall give you C+.
C+. Okay, that's good, Pete.
I'm disappointed, but I will accept it.
We need to get a plane and start flying looking for the elusive River of B.
It's got to be a seaplane, obviously, for this kind of adventure.
Seaplane. Okay, well, look, there you go. That is the show for this week. If you'd like to get in touch about any of the things that we've talked about on the show, or just to say hello, you can reach out to us on social media, through our website at hhepodcast.com, or by email at peteandryan@hhepodcast.com.
Yes, indeed. We'd love to hear from you, and you never know, you might end up featured on a future show.
Now, one way to definitely feature on a future episode is to rate and review the show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or on Good Pods. We recently received another 5-star review from Keb.
We love Keb.
Be like Keb. Your recommendation really goes a long way to helping us bring the show to new listeners, so please do go on there, give us a little review.
And if you're on Mastodon, Facebook, Instagram or X, you can find us at HHE Podcast. And subscribing there will give you an alert when we post new trivia, a lot of pictures we tend to put up and other things we can think of.
That's right. We're going to be back again soon with our next episode, episode 98, Parenthood in Libya during 1492 to 1898.
Yay!
But in the meantime, a huge thank you to the judge himself. Thank you, Paul.
My pleasure.
And that's it. I guess all that's left to say is...
Here comes the darkness.
In the section on the Summer of Love, Pete,
Yes.
you talked about the Diggers.
I did talk about the Diggers, the radical street theatre group. Yes, indeedy.
That's exactly right. And it sort of really tickled me. So I thought I'd take a little look to see a little bit more about the Diggers. So they were formed in 1966 by a group of activists that were affiliated with a troupe of mimes.
Oh, God.
I didn't know mimes travelled in packs like that.
Yeah, they do. You've got to watch out for them. They're silent and deadly. Now, they were influenced by anarchist principles, they say. They opposed consumerism. They advocated for a society where goods and services were available to all. But they used street theatre as their form of protest. Now, at these events, they would hand out leaflets, which they called digger papers, that were essentially copies of their manifesto. And in one event, they also handed out digger dollars.
Ooh.
This was part of an event called the Death of Money. And it was a fake currency they'd created that could be exchanged for goods and services in their digger stores, which were shops where people could just walk in and take anything they needed without payment.
My mind is blown. I feel my worldview being challenged.
Yeah. They also did some good stuff too. They established some health clinics for people with sexually transmitted diseases, and they even gave out free food to the public. That free food, though, was called Digger Stew, and it was made from discarded food they found on the street.
Was that part of the advertisement, or something you found out later to your cost?
I love that idea of just going around and picking up scraps off the street, putting it in a big pot, and then go like, free food, everyone.
Only one thing happened in the summer of 1967.
The birth of a Dursley.
Digger Dursley.
Yes.
I can dig it. I believe in a thing called love.
That's not how that goes! Seriously, what is wrong with you? Do you not listen to music?
No, I don't. Hello, lovely YouTube folks. This is a special message just for you.
Yeah, thanks for listening all the way to the end.
Now, if you enjoyed the show, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below.
And don't forget to take a moment to hit that like and smash subscribe.
Hit that like.
Yeah,
Smash subscribe.
yeah, it's what people say.
Do they, though?
Yeah. Only the cool kids.
And you think you're the cool kids, do you?
No, we're the cool kids.
Oh, yeah, I suppose we are. All right, smash that like button, people. Smash it real good.
Oh, yeah. Nice.